Old Ridge. Episode 10 of the Passion Collective podcast. I'm your host, Zach Frank, and tonight we are joined by my good friend Kito. What's going on, buddy?
What's up, man? Great to be here.
Great to have you. It's been a crazy year, and as somebody whom I consider to be one of the hardest working musicians that I have the pleasure of knowing, how's the adjustment been? I mean, you're a gig maniac.
Yeah. Well, not so much in 2020, but in normal times, yes. I think we're getting back to that, as we've all been kind of hoping for and looking forward to. It's funny, you go from having nothing on the books really for a full year of a pandemic to here we are now starting to ease our way back into normalcy. And now the calendar's filling up, which as a gigging musician is fantastic. That's what we want to see, we want to have. But it's definitely good to feel that sense of excitement again, and even the preparation before gigs. Charting out the music and making sure I'm straight in all the material is something I've missed doing, surprisingly.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the listeners, how many projects are you currently in?
Oh man, I guess
let's list them off.
All right, I guess 6 active, maybe more now at this point.
Wow.
Particle being the big one, but we haven't really done too much, even with the pandemic. 2019 we, did a couple gigs, and then I think with everything that happened last year, we kind of slowed down on that front. But I do expect we'll be doing something again soon, hopefully. Besides Particle, been playing with Peak, obviously, indie funk rock band out of Brooklyn. Jeremy Hilliard from Turbine, Josh, Carter from Haley Jane and the Primates, Johnny Young on keyboards. That's been really fun. Been doing some streams throughout the pandemic year on that front too, from our studio in Brooklyn. Besides that, I've got my buddy Chris Deletto that I play with also from Deletto, the project, which is funny. We released, this record, Old Kid, that we've been working on for about 2 years. A month or two before the whole pandemic situation. We did our album release party the week before the shutdown.
Damn.
But we're going to be working on some new stuff too, me and him. So it's just funny the timing of everything, right? How you can work for however long on a product you intend to market and tour and support off of, and then the universe throws some curveballs your way. But
I think there are a few people in that boat for sure.
For sure. And then in addition to that, my man Stefan Marcellus, maybe you know him from The Voice a couple of years back. He's a soul kind of R&B type singer of that variety. He and I have been working again together pretty closely on some stuff, so we're going to be doing a stream in May with that as well. Besides that, I've got a couple other little freelance projects I play in. Ficus is still something that, we're all friends. We all talk about performing again live. That's not an active project, I'd say right now, but I still consider that one of my many projects I'm a part of. And a couple new ones too. I'm sure you wanted to inquire about the newest one in the edition, but
that'll come. I don't know if I'm supposed to.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to let the cat out of the bag on this or not yet. But
so when did you start playing drums?
I started when I was, 13, I guess. When I got kind of serious about it, I started taking lessons at the infamous Long Island Drum Center in Nyack.
Yep. Shout out to Frank.
Yep. Frank Colonado. So, I think I got interested when I was around the age of 10 or 11, once kind of music took this hold on my life, and I really found this whole sense of purpose in life at that age. And then it's funny, I started playing piano before I did anything. That was probably even younger, maybe closer to the age of 8. And I got bored with piano pretty quickly. I took lessons for a year or two and it just wasn't really resonating. Like, music resonated with me, but the performance of piano at that age just was not something that I was able to kind of grasp onto. And then I heard Rush for the first time. That's my little Rush plug that I always have to drop in. And, of course, like so many thousands of drummers out there probably can say the same thing. As soon as I heard Neil Peart's playing, initially I was just astounded and amazed, and I decided to pick up a pair of sticks. And before I even had a drum kit, just bash on my bed at the time. I would arrange the pillows on my bed in like, a circular form to kind of mimic the way the kit was set up. I'd take the smaller pillows and put them on the left, like the smaller toms. I put the bigger pillows on the right, like the floor toms. So, I would just beat away on my pillow and bed sheets until I got a kit when I was about 13. And at that point, I'd been taking lessons for about a year or two.
Yeah.
So, got serious around that kind of early, teenage year period of my life, I'd say.
So where were you born and raised?
Born in New York City. So even as a Jersey boy, raised for the most part, I still like to come back to my New York roots. And
of course,
my family's in New York, been working and socializing in New York City for all of my life. So I still consider myself a New Jersey hybrid. But yeah, I was born and raised rather in Bergen County, New Jersey.
So who showed you Rush? Was you did you have influence from your dad or something? Is he a big rock and roll guy?
Definitely. Both my parents are huge music people. Actually, I do credit my parents for their astounding taste in music, for why I had access to so many incredible bands from an early age. I think I was probably the only kid in, middle school listening to Iron Maiden and Van Halen, like seriously, and actually enjoyed it. All the teachers used to joke. I'd come in with the band T-shirts and they would be like, how do you know about that band? I'd be like, what do you mean? Like Iron Maiden. I've never seen a 13-year-old kid in 2003 wearing an Iron Maiden T-shirt. But my parents definitely turned me on to a lot of that stuff. Rush was one of them. Rush is one of my dad's favorite bands, and that was actually the first, I think, live concert I went to. It's a Vapor Trails tour when they had first come back after Neil Peart's hiatus. He had some family tragedy and took a break from playing, and they came back. It was the timing was pretty perfect. It was like this perfect storm of me at this young age discovering what music is and what this creation of drums and rhythm is, and then this iconic band that just so happens to be my favorite band coming back, for the first time in 5 years.
Perfect timing.
It was perfect timing, exactly. And then,
so you got your mind blown.
Oh yeah, straight up, dude. 10-year-old kid on the lawn at PNC Arts Center.
Yeah.
Just worship, couldn't even believe what I was seeing, obviously, and I think you would recall, I don't know what your first concert experience was, but whatever it was.
I was just about to say, sorry to cut you off, sidebar to that, when we went and saw King Crimson at the Cap.
Oh yeah, dude.
With the 3 drummers.
Dude, and that was actually, to this day, still one of the craziest rhythmic performances I've ever seen in my entire life.
My brain was dripping out of my ears.
Yeah, that was a good day. We had a session beforehand. We played some drums, and then we went to go see that show in the evening.
Yeah, just completely sober, and just that is not easy to do.
No, the execution of those 3 guys was beyond anything I've ever experienced personally. And it's funny, coming from a big prog background, like I said, Rush and Dream Theater was a big, favorite of mine for a while too. Yes, and Genesis I also appreciate too. Of course. Not quite as much to the same level, but I do, of course, enjoy those bands and appreciate what they did. But King Crimson, it's funny, that one always kind of slid through the cracks for me. I never really dove in as a kid to King Crimson as hard. And then as I got a little bit older, I of course tried to listen through some of their catalog, and a lot of it was very it's very Zappa-esque, where it's taking a lot of chances, a lot of explorational kind of shit going on, not something easy to grasp onto unless you're a musician, right?
No, yeah. It's so some of it it won't make sense to the common listener,
which is the fun part about
pop
it.
Ears.
Right. That's the best part about it, actually, when you do appreciate it for what it is. But that was the first time I really got to even get the full King Crimson experience. Was that show a couple years back that we went to?
Yeah.
Because you can listen to their discography or whatever and be like, okay, this is cool, holy shit. But then when you see it, it's a completely different experience.
Yeah, Robert Fripp and Tony Levin, and then the 3 drummers.
Yeah, Gavin Harrison, dude. Whew, he stole the show on that one, I gotta say.
He's built different.
Yeah, he really is.
His work with Porcupine Tree and stuff too. He's just an incredible drummer.
For sure.
It's crazy. So,
dude, the way they would trade, my favorite. Sorry,
just
to keep piggybacking off that, the way they would trade 8s and 16s, those 3 guys, basically just passing the ball.
Yes.
And the way they had it, set up on the stage too, where, man, I can't think of the other 2 guys' names right now. I looked them up immediately after the show, obviously, but I feel terrible as a drummer not knowing their names right now.
Yeah, no, I don't either. I know Gavin, though.
Of course, yeah, we know Gavin. So the guy on the left, he would start, his little rhythmic piece, whatever, and go for 16 or 32, whatever it was. And then on the drop of a dime,
I don't know,
the other guy would pick up, like the guy in the middle, and then he wouldn't even play the same amount of bars sometimes. He might play like half the amount of time, and then Gavin would pick up on the far right side of the stage. It was just the way they passed the ball back and forth to each other. They must have that down to a science where they know who's picking up where and who's dropping off where, because there was no downtime whatsoever.
Dude, like one of them would like rest for 2 beats and then perfectly this one would fill it. Then they would drop back in like the rest and like.
That was the craziest part. Yeah, it wasn't even like the trading the 8s and the 16s. It was like within the same bars.
And then like a percussive that was...
Yeah, that was one of the coolest experiences of my live music, I think, career.
No,
was
for sure.
Getting to see that performance.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that I got to see them,
Me too, man.
Especially at the Cap. And I just knew...
And you hooked that up, too. That was your work.
Yeah, when I was like working at the Cap, and I was like, who's going to really appreciate this? Like, I hit Dexter up first from Sonic, because King Crimson's his favorite band.
Yeah.
Like, he's the one who really, like... I never really listened to King Crimson, and he's like... Because, like, going back to what you said about your parents and being grateful to be shown those musical artists at a young age and get that taste, like, that's how, on the flip side, with, like, jazz and jazz fusion, I was listening to, like, Weather Report and Jeff Beck, Blow by Blow, Steely Dan, all that stuff.
Blow by Blow is...
It's one of my favorite albums
one of the
ever.
all times, absolutely.
It's incredible. And, I was like, who's going to appreciate it? And I was like, Kito will. And so it just worked out perfectly. But yeah, besides Rush and Neil Peart, who else? Who are some other big influences as drummers?
Well, we can talk about the guys that kind of shape your whole existence.
Like the big giants, like him.
Right.
But then also like the other styles of music that we like to see, like the more jammy electronic stuff.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, you can always go back to like, it's always that kind of conversation. It's like, most impactful versus maybe like favorite stylistically. You know what I mean? But I would say the guys who really kind of molded me into the drummer that I am today, like really laid that foundation from an early age, the prog guys, Neil Peart. Mike Portnoy was another big fan of mine for a while. No surprise there. He's a huge Neil Peart fan, like any other drummer.
Yeah, it's all from the same tree.
Exactly. Dream Theater was like kind of the heavier version of Rush in a way, like just the edgy prog rock with like more metal infusion in there, which I'm a huge metalhead too, so I obviously love that. Tool, Danny Carey. Tool is my top 3 favorite bands of all time. It's like Rush, Tool, and like Jamiroquai, which is kind of funny, but Danny Carey, just the thunderous command that he has over his kit, mixed in with like the odd meters, and his whole approach is so worldly. He plays very percussively, very tribal-esque, but he's also just a thunderous animal, like in metal music. So definitely those 3 guys: Portnoy, Peart, and Danny Carey. Nico McBrain from Iron Maiden, I was big on that for a while. Just those like ridiculous runs of fills, Run to the Hills, all that kind of stuff, and just the straight kind of gallop, like the triplets on the kick drum, that kind of thing. Definitely got me for a while, So I would just be in my basement, playing along to these records, these 80s, prog and metal, records, and I would just try to play them by ear and figure out the parts based on what I was listening to. Reading music never really landed for me the same way. I've always been a by ear kind of guy, so. God bless my parents for letting me spend 8 hours in my basement and come home after school. Like the first thing I did was just go downstairs. Once I got the kid, obviously, go downstairs and just bash away. And with these cement walls all around me, no soundproofing whatsoever. And probably all the drum sound just going straight to the floorboards,
Straight up bouncing, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. It really probably sounded terrible. Yes. But, they let me work that out. And
I feel like that's like one of the most... I think that could be overlooked by some people, that like for a drummer, for the most part, to really reach those high levels, it does come down to their parents, because
definitely
there are a lot of parents that like
wouldn't go for that at
all.
all.
They won't buy their kid a drum set, because it sounds like trash.
I had this conversation with somebody else the other
beginning.
Day.
Really?
Yeah, I did, because we were saying, like, somebody brought it up to me. They're like, why is it that there's so many guitar players out there, but it's really hard to find drummers? And I think, it comes down to the point where it's like drums are, one, so much more expensive than every other instrument. Like, look, music is expensive regardless,
Yeah,
you know.
for like
But
real instruments.
right. Like, you know, guitars can run several $1,000s too, but like drum kits, there's just so much involved. There's like, you got to buy the kit, then you got to buy the cymbals,
And
then
then
you got to
the
buy the hardware, and then the
Yeah.
heads, and then the sticks, which are like now like, you know, upwards of $10 a
I
pair
know,
anyway.
it's
So it's
crazy.
like, and you go through those on a regular basis. So it's just a very expensive skill and hobby, or whatever you want to call it, you know. So I think that comes into play obviously when you look at the percentage or ratio of drummers to other musicians, you know. And of course too, it's like, you know, it's very easy to just play a guitar in your bedroom,
And just
not
control the volume.
yeah, I just play it at a super low volume or not even run it through an amp.
Yeah.
You know, play acoustic guitar, just electric with no amp on. And drums, you know, you need to have a space. You have to have a space that not only can you set up the drum kit, but can you play it
Yeah.
and be loud and be obnoxious and suck really hard for a while
Yeah,
before it
for
starts
a
to sound
while.
even remotely good. You know,
Yeah, it takes a lot of patience.
big time, big time.
For the people behind you. But like for example, I listened to a podcast with that kid Grayson, the Recruitment or whatever, who's
Yeah.
just
Oh
like
my god, dude, the kid,
a
the swing
prodigy.
kid. Yeah. Oh my god.
So he's just he's like Buddy Rich. Like
Yeah,
that
pretty
type
much.
of
He's like
shit.
the new age Buddy Rich. Yeah.
For sure.
And he's honestly, sounds crazy to say, I think he's that good. Like,
No,
when you
I
watch,
do too.
When you watch his
And
technicality and his
he's,
skill.
but
and-
like besides the technicality and the skill and just like his like strength with traditional grip and
Yeah,
whatnot, and then he can
right.
play match, but it's also the showmanship.
Yes,
aspect.
100%,
He's a
100%.
showman,
Yep.
and like he just does the little tricks like under the sim.
like Buddy Rich was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And but I listened to him on a podcast and he was just like talking about his parents and how he's like, you know, I see some like kids my age and other people that are like really good on the internet, but they're in like fully soundproof studios where they can practice for hours on end and it doesn't bother. And he's like, I played on like the same kit, like, you know, I wasn't spoiled like that, and I play in a basement that's like not soundproof, so I couldn't, like, I can only play for like a certain amount of time. He's like,
Sure.
he's like, but you know, then if I can't play and I can't make noise, I'll just practice my singles
Yep,
for hours, and you can see that because
Yeah.
his singles traditional are just like
They're insane.
ridiculous.
They're insane.
But it just goes back to like his parents being fully supportive, and he did the whole school band thing, and he went and did like the New York State music thing, which I did like in middle school, but like I was just fucking around and I wasn't serious about drums on that level.
Sure.
But then I saw some old clips of him in like high school jazz band at like whatever center in Manhattan, and yeah, that kid is special.
Special is the right word for it, for sure.
Yeah,
Because you don't see anybody play that style anymore, especially
Exactly.
a kid. He looks to be about our age, maybe a little bit
No,
younger.
he's like 19.
Oh, is he that young?
Yeah.
I thought he was like early 20s.
He
maybe.
just graduated high school.
Oh, well, there you go. I mean,
like during COVID.
right. Do you know any other 18-year-olds playing
No.
big band swing like that
No,
and are that good at it?
that's what
No,
I'm saying.
yeah.
It's like a lost art.
Right.
And that's why it's just cool to go on his Instagram and see like these drummers from like these internationally renowned bands like Chad from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Raging Against the Machine, like these like hard rock and roll drummers that are
Sure.
just like, yo,
This kid is a
dude,
real
I
deal.
love like, and Chad from the Chili, he's an amazing drummer.
He is. He's underappreciated in a lot of
Yes.
ways because, you know, he doesn't show off. He doesn't do
No.
a whole lot, but he just lays down that really sturdy, just thick funk groove, you know? But
Yeah. And then like on his Instagram though, I went back and watched, and like he has some chops,
oh, for sure.
but
for
like
sure.
he doesn't. Him and Flea are just that.
Right. They're just locking that shit in.
Yeah. So besides like the big giants and the prog guys, when did you first start seeing the more electronic jam band craziness and going to music festivals? Because I feel like that was I know you pretty well, and I feel like that was like the next step of your musical evolution.
Definitely.
Is that like the live music scene and festivals and shit?
For sure. I mean, you know, there's no shying away from the fact that I'm definitely very much a product of whatever opportunities within, you know, our little niche of the music community came to be available to me. You know, I got into it pretty young. You know, like I was definitely 16 or 17. My first kind of introduction to that, I guess, was when the Disco Biscuits and Humphreys McGee played McCarran Park Pool in Brooklyn in 2007. That was like the first time I went to a show like that, you know, because up until that point I was going to heavy metal shows and prog rock shows. So like, you know, that was a whole new experience for me, and went with my buddy at the time and a couple of older friends of mine too, who were kind of like, you know, I guess, mentoring us and, showing us the
Yes.
ropes in that kind of situation. But yeah, I mean, I saw those guys, both two fantastic bands, as we both know. And that was, I guess, really the catalyst, to set everything in motion from there on out. Because then I started going to more shows of that nature. I started seeing more Humphrey shows and more Biscuit shows, and then I got into SCS9, right? It's like, these jam giants, as we refer to them,
Yeah.
right? And for me at the time, and still even to this day, although it's evolved quite a bit at this point, going back, I guess, wow, that was 15 years now. If you
Yeah.
think about it, half my life I've spent seeing these
Yeah.
bands, and playing in this community, which is cool to think about, but also kind of shocking. Like that kind of world that opened up, where it's like, okay, there's more to music than just what I've been, immersed in up until this point. So it's not just heavy metal and rock and roll and 80s arena rock and whatnot. Then I started getting into jazz around the same time too. That was kind of when my first appreciation of other styles definitely started. It was all around that same point. So, within this jam community, whatever you want to call it, that was definitely what opened up that portal for me. And then, in turn, I was playing in Ficus at the time. I would have been about 16, 17. That's like when I first joined the band. And, like Steve, the guitar player, Steve Malone, was also into that kind of stuff. Johnny Schmarek, the keyboard player, was also into that kind of stuff, like Fish and whatnot. And, so there was definitely like influences coming from all directions within Ficus, but I guess, the electronic kind of thing really took a hold on me. And, going from prog and metal, which is so technical and so complicated and complex, to really this kind of just minimalistic, stripped down, four on the floor pocket kind of groove, was like this. It's funny. It's like eye-opening thing for me, because I was like, wait a minute. It doesn't always have to be all the time. It's like this band. These bands kind of opened up this, like I said, this portal, showing me like, oh, wait a minute. Like you can do very little and sound incredible.
Because because that style of like the pocket and the four on the floor,
And just
when
the
it's
layering.
when it's done right and the textures are there, it gives people in the crowd that are really like a visceral reaction, like
Right.
from your body.
Right.
You
It's very
feel,
primal.
yes,
Yeah.
you feel it like in your heart,
Right.
like where some of the super prog stuff is like, if you like have a basic understanding of what's going on, you'll get your mind blown. But like the feeling that, like that stripped down, just steady, where you're just like adding a layer, taking a layer away.
Right.
Now this person's shifting into this.
Right.
Now it's getting a little bit happier, and now it's just like,
Yeah. It opens up a whole new world. And I took a liking to that, like case in point, that was really when I started getting into more electronic music. I started listening to house, and, like I said, Jamiroquai is one of my favorite bands. And what I liked about them was that they did that, electronic kind of disco, like four on the floor style, but then they also like infused fusion, like it was, no pun
yeah,
intended. It was fused together with other funk genres and pop and elements of rock. And, if you listen to early Jamiroquai, it actually just sounds like it could be Stevie Wonder.
yeah.
Like
No, they're one of one.
yeah, exactly. And did you go to that
No,
show?
I
Oh
wish I
man,
did
oh
at
dude,
Forest
yeah.
Hills.
Yeah, I had an extra ticket. I should have. I feel like I had to have asked you.
I don't know, bro. I think I would have went.
I ended up eating like I bought like 6 or 8 tickets when they first went on sale, because I was like, I'm bringing all my friends to this show. People need to see this band. Like people who I knew weren't listening.
Everybody
to Jamiroquai.
said, everyone that went was like, that's
Right.
one of the best shows I've
Right.
ever been to.
So I bought like as many tickets as I could, and I ended up eating 2 of them, because
Wow.
I was like, how can I not get these off my hand right now? I was couldn't believe it, but
But you got your
anyways.
mind blown.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was everything that I had hoped for. But coming back to their style, I guess like that band, fusing all those different genres and flavors together was really got me. And the first record that I kind of picked up on was Funk Odyssey, which is mostly electronic based.
Yeah.
But that's why that band's got so many different sounds. Like I said, the earlier records are more kind of fusion funk. The middle records are a lot more disco and like that early 2000s kind of style dance. That was really popular at the time. And then even in like the last record they put out, Automaton, is super electronic and kind of more contemporary sounding. More consistent with the sounds of I guess that was 2017 or 2018 when it was released. So. Yeah, I mean, electronic music has become a pretty big focus for me in the last, like I said, 10, 15 years, and bringing those flavors to my own projects like Ficus. At the time, that was something that wasn't currently present in the band's music. Particle, obviously, is a very electronic based band. The pioneers of Jamtronica, as they're often referred to, and kind of helping to create that style that,
for sure.
like the New Deal and the Disco Biscuits and these other bands.
And then
helped.
on the flip side of all those guys, like look at somebody like JoJo Mayer and Nerve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
also one of my favorites.
Yeah. He's one of one too.
I'm glad you brought him up because, I figured we'd be talking about drummers and whatnot. And as far as, we were talking about, guys that kind of help you form your sound and your personal identity as a player, right? JoJo was somebody who came into the mix like later on.
Exactly.
It's funny. I would always see him on like the Modern Drummer magazines when I was a kid and be like, oh, like who's this guy? But then you don't really dive in or appreciate what it is until you actually get it. You know what I mean? So then I really started listening to him. I was like, oh wait, this guy does electronic. He does live drum and bass. And then drum and bass opened up this whole other world. Yeah, I was like this, and then this is like electronic music that's super fast and kind of has that like proggy, like like a lot of notes, a lot of technicality involved. So that was like a whole nother thing that I was astounded to discover and kind of stumble upon, and I was like, wow, this is so amazing.
Because he like crosses those two styles for you,
very much
like
so.
The super technical playing, but still with that just like
absolutely
that electronic pulse.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's one of a kind. I mean, he's
absolutely
one of my favorites also.
Absolutely.
And then I mean, drum and bass, that was another thing that I got into late. But, like discovering Pendulum, like 10 years after the fact. And like, man, I could play those grooves all fucking day.
Yeah.
Like, I could play that shit, no problem, and just do it for an hour and have a blast the entire time. But,
so besides the Forest Hills, I just want to go, can you name like another one of your craziest experiences as a fan?
As a fan, for like any live concert experience I've been to,
more so in like the vein that we were just talking about, like not like the 80s metal stuff.
Yeah.
Just like something that really
blew my mind.
Yeah, just like improvisationally speaking.
Yeah. Man, I would say, I mean, look, however many Jamtronica shows or whatever you want to call them that I've been to in my life, I've seen a lot of crazy improvisation, a lot of them being Biscuit shows. Obviously, I've had my mind blown at plenty of those. But as far as like just overall raw improvisation, like seeing the Bad Plus, at the Blue Note, like that sticks out to me just because.
Yeah, their definition of a
power trio right there, and that was still with Ethan Iverson before he had left the band on the piano. And like that for me, was a lot of freeform jazz. Like they have their compositions they play, of course, too, which are surprisingly well thought out, but also super random. It's like they're so random that they're planned almost. You know what I mean? And another Dave King, another one of a kind drummer. Like I sat at a table at the Blue Note, literally like if that was basically his drum kit. And this is my table.
That's where I sat for the Adam Dice Quartet.
Yeah.
I was literally.
That's more or less where it
is.
was. And dude, he was so quiet. His playing was so dynamic that like literally there were times where he was playing, but his just finesse and his touch is so well controlled that I would sit here and he's like he's doing these little ghost notes on the floor tom, whatever, and it's like you're like almost straining to listen to hear him. And then, he crescendo and then just go off. Like, man, that was a truly powerful experience. Having, gotten into the Bad Plus also in my early college years, whatever, and then getting to see that for the first time, I was like, that was one that really stood out to me. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like I have a lot of work to do.
No, for sure. Yeah, touched on that. So you did go on to study music in college?
I did study music in college, but I didn't major in music, at the time. It's funny, like, Ficus was in full force during those college years. And, I didn't study music because I always liked the idea of like having some kind of other backup plan, I guess. It's like, I mean, look, as much as I love music and I do music basically full time, I still do plenty of other things, So like, I also was involved and interested in, media production, audio production. So that was actually my major was media production in college. But I did, I minored in music, and I had continued to study music in my free time anyways, from, like I said, about 13 or 14 on. And I still do. I think now at this point in my life, I study it the most because now I'm comfortable as a player, and now I can kind of also work out things on my own if I need to. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
can go, take a lesson with, another incredible drummer and learn, of course, a million things. But I can also just kind of do my own research and my own perusing around for ideas. I'm like, if I see a performance online or something that I'm like super impressed by, I can kind of break it down now
Yeah.
myself with the knowledge and skill I've acquired over time, which I didn't have 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Like maybe 10 years ago, I needed somebody to show me how to do this. Now you can kind of figure out on your own after you've been playing a certain amount of years, which I'm
Yeah.
sure you experienced too. Like you develop an ear for things.
Yeah, I'm like starting to do that and become like less intimidated and just
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
break it down and like especially all the odd meter stuff
Mm-hmm.
and making it sound smooth is like what I've really been focusing on as of late, 5, 7, 9,
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
and it's just like hearing it and then I just have to break it down into subdivisions
Yeah.
first and be like, okay, this is a 4 and a 5,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
and
Right.
just like and like Tommy Igo, who's just like an incredible drummer and
Mm-hmm.
music educator, and just like when he was talking about odd meters, he posted something the other day and how you really need to get to the point where you're not counting, but you're literally just like you're playing with the music, you're doing what the music's telling you, you're feeling what the bass and what the
Mm-hmm.
guitar is,
Mm-hmm.
because when you're playing the odd meter stuff and you're like, it just does not sound good at all.
Yeah, when it comes to the odd meters, there's definitely tricky arrangements that I do still count to some extent.
Yeah.
But I'd say the majority of the time you're just feeling it.
Yeah, exactly, and that's where you want to get to.
Right, right. Like 7 is super easy to feel.
Yeah, no, that's
because 7 just feels
it
good.
just comes
you know?
around. No, no.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that's like the 5 and 7, but now when you go like 9 and 13,
Sure, sure.
that's when
I love 13.
yeah,
Man, I love 13 because I love that 6 and 7 combination, or whatever you want to do. 5, 5 and 3, whatever it might be. But like 6 and 7 to me, just like there's a FICA song back in the day called "Be Here Now," which we never recorded, but there's some live versions out there that I basically brought to the table. I was like, let's write a song using this meter, and we did, and it's kind of like it's basically this like drum and bass style like light jazz song. It's very bizarre, but it was one of my favorites at the time, and because of the way it flowed. It's like this 6 into 7 that should be pretty jarring actually felt really natural.
yeah,
And then at the very end, instead of like the kind of like jungly shuffly groove we had, we just put it over 4, so it was like 6 over 4 and then
nice.
7 over 4, and it just felt even that much better. It kind of had like a cemetery walk kind of feel, like that
Okay,
Humphrey
yeah,
song,
yeah, yeah,
which is
yeah.
in 7, that kind of thing. But yeah, you definitely just you start to feel it more and more as time goes on, and then you can start really having fun, because then when you're not thinking about it,
It's
you're
just
free to
freeing.
play and express.
Exactly, and really, that's like the point I'm at now, because like everything that we're writing now it's no longer in 4/4 really. We're doing stuff in
Yeah.
6/8 and 7 and
Yeah, man.
9, but it definitely just makes it more interesting.
For sure. And it's good to have both of those styles of song in the catalog, because when you're performing live for people, of course, like, look, there's a certain type of crowd that's going to appreciate the odd meter stuff, right?
Yes,
But there's also a certain type of crowd you're going to lose people with that.
yes. If you
And
do it like to
right,
excess.
right. And, on the contrary, too, with the 4/4 stuff, there's plenty of people you might bore
Yeah, there's
with too much
gonna be,
4/4. You know what I
another
mean?
white boy funk band.
Right, right,
and
exactly.
blah, blah, blah.
Right, right.
But
Or another Jamtronica band doing 125, BPM house for an hour and a half. So.
that's what like Dan Lyons, when I just did the podcast with him, he's like, Zach, the one thing it's cool that like Sonic or the Plug, like you guys just didn't want to be another Unts band, and I
Right,
was like, we
right.
never wanted to. Like we're like so heavily influenced by jazz fusion,
Yeah, and you can
like
hear it.
proggy stuff,
Absolutely.
that like, but also that stuff too. So we do break that out, but we never. Like I want to do like really interesting, unique shit.
Definitely, man. Definitely.
And that's
Because it challenges you as a player.
exactly, and it makes you grow so much. And I want to be playing with musicians that are better than me and make me grow. Or if I'm playing on a bill with another band with players that I really respect, like that's the type. I don't want to play down.
Yeah.
I want to play up, and I just want to be a
Absolutely.
sponge, and that's how you get better. Like you can't.
That's the right
If you're
mentality
too
to have.
comfortable, it's easy to just play And like sometimes I only need to do that and I overplay and then I listen back. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I've had plenty of
I
instances like that for myself too.
we did this last Sonic stream after we didn't practice for like mad long and Ben asked
Yeah.
us to and we did it and like I listened back to some parts and I was so frustrated.
Dude, that's
I get
across
too
the board, though.
excited
Yeah, yeah,
and I get too excited and I'm like,
yeah.
and then I'm just like, oh my
I
God,
I,
it
I
sounds
cringe.
so much better.
Right,
Just play the
laying
beat.
down the pocket.
Hit
Yeah,
one little cymbal.
yeah,
Do one little hi-hat stutter. You don't have to go.
yeah.
It's just, but speaking about music as a whole, since you've like dedicated a lot of your life, this is like a very broad human question, but how important do you really think music is to like the collective consciousness of human beings? Because I feel like after this whole COVID situation and a lot of people aren't exactly living their dream lives. A lot of people are struggling with depression, anxiety, addiction.
Sure, sure.
People lose people. They're working at dead end jobs. They're not making the money that they should be to be comfortable. But every weekend they can look forward to that release, and where
Yeah.
all their problems diminish for a few hours. So yeah, I just wanted to ask. I want to ask people that have really dedicated like careers to music, how important and how valuable it really is.
It's extremely valuable. I think, as you know, in terms of the collective consciousness, like you said. I mean, you can feel it. In this last year, without live concerts, really. I mean, like the streams are cool. The streams were great to get us by. You know what I mean? And it's kind of cool that it did open up this whole new platform of the industry where, I think that's going to be a very big part of live music in a sense going forward is these live streams,
I agree.
that people can, stay at home and sit on their couch and pay $20 and still support the artist, but not have to leave the comfort of their home. But there's, at the same time, there's something left to be desired, because you're not experiencing the live energy transfer of music that, when you're there in person, obviously. So for me personally, like this last year, I definitely learned a lot about myself because I focused my time on some other things, instead of, I was up until that point, I was on the road 150, 200 days out of the year, playing with whoever it might be at the time. And it was kind of just go, go, go. You know what I mean? Like I never had a chance to stop and kind of like think about what I was doing. It was just like always like, what's the next gig? What's the next gig? What am I doing to prepare for the next gig? And as adventure filled and adrenaline fueled as that lifestyle was, like this year kind of gave me a chance to step back and be like, okay, I have some time to think about some things, to have some time to do some other things with my life, but still at the same time, even with all that being said, I miss the impact that music has had on me. Like, like if I was off the road, I wouldn't even really stay home. I would still be looking to go to a concert on any weekend that I
Just
had
that
off. You know what I mean?
like the connection.
Yeah, like I wanted to see my friends that I haven't seen in
so
weeks.
many good friends.
Yeah, like sometimes there's friends that you only see at shows. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it's like I miss those people, and I miss the bond of like like experiencing this really awesome moment in the music, and like looking over to your buddy and like giving the high five or something because you're both just there in the moment experiencing the same high. It's like
It's the best.
that there's nothing that beats that for me.
No.
Being outside on a beautiful, summer afternoon with the sun shining and, it's like nice, perfect temp, like you're not sweating your balls off,
Yeah,
but it's like
just
nice,
like-
cool 75,
Yes.
and it, just like, like some feel good funk music or something like, man, cold beer in hand. Like
Yeah.
what does it get any better than that?
No.
It doesn't, right?
It's so simple.
It's so simple, but so effective and so
Yes.
important to how I think we function as human beings and how our happiness is derived from that. Like we all just spent the last year indoors, with very little vitamin D, access
So
to sunlight,
unhealthy.
and music produces serotonin. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like it's part of what I think regulates the chemical balance in our bodies.
No, for sure.
So I think it's extremely important, and I think that's something that we've all missed severely. I'm sure I can speak for thousands of people.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I'm just I'm excited for society to get that opportunity again, to experience that again, because I think with a life, a life without music, a world without music is a very sad, dark, depressive kind of state to be in. It's like
100%.
when you remove the arts from life, what are you left with?
No.
The mundane reality of the day to day.
Yeah.
The arts are what give us purpose. The arts are what push us to the next, whatever the next step is. It's like
Yeah.
if you're looking ahead, like when you got something on the calendar that you've been looking forward to, like you buy tickets to this epic show that you are, been waiting for months to go see. You're like, you just can't wait for that damn day. You know what I mean? Then you go and it's the best night of the year.
Yeah, so like that exact concept, like what you just said about life without the arts, that's why the book that the final draft's almost done that I've been writing, and Georgie's been doing illustrations. It's called Wolves and
That's
Horses.
fantastic.
It's called Wolves and Horses.
Yeah.
And my concept, I just came up with that title for some reason. It stuck with me, and then months later, I was just thinking about it because all the chapter titles are really well thought out and conceptual. Like, for example, White Flags and Wishing Wells represent surrender and hope. And it's like a lot of stuff like that. So then I thought back Wolves and Horses and just about the evolution of human beings with writing, like literature, books, and art. Just how, like, dogs and horses have helped humans evolve since the beginning of time.
Sure.
Like man's best friend, and then like the horse was a car, literally. Right. That's like how, like without writing and art and just the arts in general,
Yeah.
like our spirits would not have evolved.
There's nothing for them to do.
Exactly.
There's nowhere for them to go. Like
Yeah.
that's something that you feel is unleashed, right? In these moments of live music energy transfer or what you get from writing, or
Yes.
what some people get from cooking.
Or
Anything that is
reading
creative.
reading like you have a bad day and you
Yeah.
come across and you just read this quote.
Yeah.
And you're just like, wow.
Yeah, absolutely,
like,
man.
That just like really struck a chord with me.
100%. And I'll tell you, not to blow too much smoke up your ass, but like when I read your stuff, I often feel that way because I've always told you from the beginning of our friendship.
Yeah.
I've always catered to your writing style.
Yeah.
I think you write with a lot of intention and also cerebral integrity. It's like I've always kind of resonated with what you write, and I would say that a lot of the stuff that I see you post, stuff that the little things that you type up,
yeah.
Man, that stuff's great, and that's the same collective energy that we share.
Exactly.
Especially as a fellow musician too. It's like because I also love to write. I don't know if we ever talked about that, but like before I got into music, I would spend a lot of my time free writing. Creative writing. Like creative writing in English class was one of my favorite things to do.
Same.
Because you just rattle off whatever's going through your brain.
Stream of consciousness.
Right. There's maybe no direction, but you just let it go. Right.
Yep.
And that in itself is a therapeutic release. Much like sitting behind a drum kit and just with no music to really learn or play and just expressing.
100%.
It's the same. You tap into the same energy.
Yeah.
And then when you, in turn, are responding or experiencing that being done or played by somebody else, you're still tapping into the same thing. So if somebody else writes something and you read it,
and it resonates with you.
Right, you're still sharing the same frequency.
Exactly.
But it's just who created and who's responding.
It's all coming from the same place. It's
Right.
just people are different antennas, and then
Right,
you're just
exactly.
picking up that frequency and then putting it
100%,
out.
100%.
But that's why I just like I like don't. I look at the title like titles like a writer and I want to be an author someday and a musician, and I'm a creative. Like that's just all I know, and I can be completely confident and say that with conviction. I just am a creative, and I'm sure you are too, and Ben is too. Like grateful for the gift of creativity because
Without a doubt.
it really enriches your life and other people's lives.
For sure, man.
But-
I mean, again, to come back to the perils of last year, it's like those first like 2 months where everyone was just like super locked down and nobody knew what the hell was going to happen with society. Like is this the end? Like is this really the thing that takes us all out?
Yeah, it got dark.
It got dark for real. And some of my like saving graces and shining moments of those first 2 months of quarantine, because I was drinking a lot. I'm sure everyone was kind of just in this like depressive state, like, man, like nothing else to do. Go pick up some liquor, like, watch some TV or something. But on those days where I wasn't feeling, that way and self-destructive, I would spend the entire day creating something, writing something new, working on stuff, making videos, I probably released more Instagram content in that 2-month period than I ever have, like over the course of time. And it's like, that's the stuff that really kind of pulled me out of that and helped me sustain. And it's a testament to what it does for the soul and for people as a whole,
Yeah. So, I have a few more questions that are broad. So, back to
Sure.
the music. Do you think that certain substances like LSD and MDMA have the ability to add to the creativity of music and to improvisation?
That's a funny question. Yeah, I definitely I definitely feel that way
I
for
mean,
sure.
if we
Yeah.
just look back even at the 60s and 70s,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
even
of
talking about
course.
the current jam bands, I just want to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think there's no shying away from the fact that those substances can add a whole lot to the experience, whether you're the one performing or the one, in the crowd experiencing.
Yeah.
So I definitely think opening those parts of your brain like these substances do create different pathways for the creativity to flow through. And again, with the big psychedelic wave in the early, the entire 60s, really, late 60s, I suppose more so than the early 60s. But, with that whole kind of movement, and it's funny, it's just so funny where it all comes kind of back to is, right, the Grateful Dead, who are looked upon as like the grandfathers of this whole jam thing. Like there would be none of these other jam bands without them, probably, like, that was very much built off of that kind of wave of like mind expanding, possibilities and really paving the way for anything's possible when you're up there on stage. Like whatever you want to do, just play it and it's gonna work
And
somehow,
feel
some
it.
way. And then a lot of times it wouldn't work, but
Of
you
course.
just let it flow and see what happens.
But then when it did work
Yeah.
and everybody on stage is tapped into the same wavelength,
And everybody in the crowd who's also tapped in
exactly,
is
then something happens.
Right.
Where like it's
Yeah.
really like,
And
I
it's
think
still
I'm
it's
feeling something bigger here.
Yeah, and it still happens too.
Of course, I've definitely felt some things
For sure.
in the crowd during certain really deep moments of improvisation with some of these bands that I follow, that once you get to really know their music and you're viewing these bands and seeing them draw out plays and execute plays, they're talking into their talkback mics like, okay, I'm going to shift into C major here, blah, 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 cut the
Yeah.
drums out.
Right.
And you're just like,
Yeah.
something happens.
The communication, the execution, and it's all kind of this perfect storm scenario where like it's this very this very in a bottle moment in
Yes,
time.
exactly. It's like a bubble.
Right. Like that little moment in time that we're talking about doesn't exist anywhere else.
Nope.
But then when you're right there.
It's all the variables and something. It doesn't
Right.
happen like at every show, but there's certain moments
Yeah,
where
yeah.
everything just, all the gears
It all
click into
clicks.
place.
Right, exactly.
And like,
Yeah. And those I can recall plenty of moments like that,
Yeah.
and they resonate very strongly with me still. Like,
yes,
there's a lot of, again, Biscuit shows where I felt that, where
100%.
plenty Fish shows that I've been to also. Like there's just, and of course being a fan of both of those bands, and when you've seen them perform as many times as you have, you know what you're looking for in those moments, and then when you get one at the show, it's beyond anything else that you can explain. You can go to the show and have a good time and like be partying and socializing, hang with your friends, but then when you're in that space, in that mind space,
and you're not talking at
not
all.
talking to
Nobody's
anybody,
in your ear,
you're just
chomping your ear
Yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah.
You're completely
Focus
focused
on the
into the
music.
music,
Yeah.
and you're like,
Yeah.
I think they're going here, blah,
Yeah,
blah,
yeah,
blah.
yeah.
And, you're
And then it
just,
happens.
It's so cerebral.
It really is. It really is. And that's the most beneficial part of this whole jam band experience, whatever you want to call it. It's like jam bands, man. You can go on a tear about them. You know what I mean? About like how there's so many of them. Half of them are doing the same exact thing that's been done already before. Like, man, there's just so many jam bands out there. And
Yes.
there is a certain kind of connotation that comes with just being another jam band.
Of
You know?
course,
And,
yeah. You get hated on, it's just stupid, blah,
Right,
blah, blah.
right.
But, like, the reality of the situation is,
that's why you go for those moments. That's why you're in it. In
And
the
they're
first place.
real.
And they're real. Yeah, they exist. And, if you can tap into that and be that kind of performer and give somebody that experience that we know what it feels like, then I think we're all doing our part here.
100%. So, on the flip side of that, why do you think that some of the purest music that has been produced and released comes from like these tortured souls that struggle with addiction? Many of them leave, they leave Earth very early on, 27 Club and all that stuff. Why do you think that the rawest music like really has came from tortured souls?
I think that it's because it comes back to like the emotional connection that you have with being creative. When you are lacking something emotionally, whether it be compassion or love or, attention for some people, whatever it might be, whatever you feel like you're not getting out of life that you need to have to feel normal, or whatever the sense of that word means, you find an outlet to get that, to like personally be able to reach out and grab something and give what you are looking for to yourself. And I think, again, as creatives, since music or writing or art is so expressive, that kind of fills that void for a lot of us in that way. And, anytime, I mean, look, if I'm having a bad day, sometimes I'm like, I don't even want to go sit down and play the drums. I just want to do nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then the days where I tell myself, okay, go downstairs, work it out, give yourself something to focus on, man, you always feel better. You know what I mean? If I sit down behind the kit for like an hour or two, if I'm having a crappy day, I'm going to feel better by the end of it, because you're expressing, it's like whatever was wearing you down before that, whether it's stress, nervousness, anxiety, whatever it was, that all tends to kind of wash away and come out in your playing. And I think to come back to the focus of your original question is that, it's kind of crazy to think about it this way, but the more tortured your soul may be, the more you're missing in that void of life.
I think the deeper you feel,
the more connection you're going to have spiritually and creatively to whatever you're trying to manifest.
Exactly. And just like the reason I brought up that question, because I stumbled across a video from Nirvana Unplugged, and I watched it. So I used to love Nirvana when I was younger, in like 6th, 7th grade, and just watching that video, and like, again, like, that's not technical music, but there's something about Kurt Cobain where he just, it's such a rawness and like a feeling that transcended. And again, he's like this one of those people that was a tortured soul.
Yeah, for sure.
It's crazy.
It's funny, like Nirvana, of course I like Nirvana.
Yeah.
Like, they were never one of those bands that totally resonated with me.
Yeah.
Which is funny. I'm a product of the 90s. Like, I should like grunge music, and I do. But I guess it never like hit me the same way that, like we said, some of the other earlier stuff did, like prog and whatnot. But I do agree with you. When you listen to that, there is a noticeable pain in the music. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like it goes across the board, but like Eric Clapton, he struggled.
For sure.
Stevie Ray Vaughan's a great example, because the blues, the blues is notoriously that pain music,
gritty,
that southern, that southern black music that came out of slavery and whatnot. And as like a white guy in Austin, Texas, again, he had his own demons, where like he couldn't completely relate to that experience as like a black guy from Mississippi that comes from that. But like, in his book, he would say he would dump a gram of blow into a glass of Crown Royale, and like it's just tearing his insides up. And
absolutely.
But you listen to like his rendition of Little Wing, and it's just like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, Stevie Ray is one of my favorites too, man. It's like, I don't listen to a lot of blues. I appreciate and love the blues, but I don't like usually just go throw it on in my free time to listen to something.
Neither. But when you like seek it out.
Right, Stevie Ray Vaughan will always be at the top of that list.
100% same.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the one last thing I wanted to ask you is, which I've been asking these people because I'm getting some interesting responses, is if you could assemble your fantasy quintet with you behind the kit, what would it be?
Wow.
You and 4 other people, there's different ways you can go about this. I'm just curious.
Oh, man, that is a awesome question, and one that I have never had to think about.
Well, now you do.
Yeah. Well, I guess I would have to go ahead and probably pick, my favorite players of those particular instruments. So there's a couple for each slot. All right, well, if I'm playing drums, I want somebody who's going to be able to lock down the rhythm section for me, but also go along and probably push me to play, not necessarily in the pocket the whole time, and go off in some crazy shit, you know what I mean? But also come back and hold it down if he needs to. So, I might go with a Geddy Lee.
Okay.
Of course, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Probably one of the best bass players of all time. I was just thinking about, like, it's funny because like my go-to guitar player just stylistically would be David Gilmour. I mean, he is by far my favorite guitar player. Pink Floyd.
I mean,
also top 5 favorite bands. Like that was another show that really blew me away. I saw David Gilmour at the Garden a couple years back, and I just on a whim bought tickets. I was like, I just got off the road.
No wasted notes.
It was a Monday night. I was like,
waste any notes.
Nothing, dude.
everything is so purposeful.
So intentional, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd probably pick David Gilmour, and it's just funny trying to think about like David Gilmour and Geddy Lee playing together would be very interesting.
Yeah.
But hey, man, it's my band. I can pick whoever I want. Right?
So where are you gonna go with the other two? What instruments?
Let's see. On keys, oh man, I almost want to pick a jazz cat just to kind of even the playing field a little bit. You know, I got the prog bass player and like the really soulful '70s rock guitar player. Oh man, maybe throw in a Herbie Hancock.
I knew you were gonna say that.
I mean, come on, why not? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Return to Forever. I'm sorry. Well, Chick Corea, if we're gonna talk about Return to Forever.
Yeah.
But,
All right.
I would say Chick or Herbie. You know, like
yeah.
either of those guys. I mean, Return to Forever was another big
romantic
fusion,
warrior.
Prog. Yeah, dude, that record.
I just
blew my mind.
Me and Jesse were just listening to that. Because I've been to go quick off the fantasy, so we have those.
Yeah.
We have one more left, but we're listening to that record, and Lenny White on the drums, Stanley Clark on the bass, Al Di Meola, and But there's this new podcast called The Stick People with Mike Clark, who's Herbie's drummer from the Headhunters, Lenny White from Return to Forever, Michael Shreve, the original Santana drummer that does the Soul Sacrifice solo, the legendary Woodstock video.
Sure.
Then David Garibaldi, Tower Power, the king of linear drumming.
Yep.
And then this other guy, Greg Arico, who's the Sly and the Family Stone drummer. But just hearing that, like, Lenny White was playing with Miles when he was like 17 years old.
Yep.
And then goes on to write that music with Chick. It's like, these guys are giants.
Al Di Meola, I think, was like, he lives in the town over from me. He lives in Old Tappan, New Jersey. And it's funny, he's like cruising around town sometimes. So shout out to Al. But I think he was like 18 or 19 when he joined that band.
Yes, he was.
I saw Return to Forever at the Apollo in, I think it was like 07. Again, like right at that time of my life where I was like just getting into music, and like that was, again, to come back to one of those shows that kind of really opened the door for me and leveled the playing field. That was like my first introduction to fusion and jazz. So yeah, I would go with Chick Corea or Herbie Hancock in that scenario.
Okay. All right, so one more.
As what, lead singer?
No, that's the thing. You can pick whatever.
Oh yeah, true.
That's why
it's my band. I can hire whoever I want.
That's
right?
why the quintet's interesting compared to a quartet, because everybody just goes bass, guitar, keys.
Sure.
So that extra is like, what are you gonna go? Singer? You're gonna do extra this, that?
Yeah, I feel like I want to throw in some horns into the mix, maybe, because I'm okay with instrumental music. You know, of course, music with vocals resonates in a different way. But like, you know, I love instrumental music. I don't need there to be vocals. I can listen to an hour of instrumentation, no problem, and not get bored. So. Well, I mean, damn, since we're talking about it, you throw Miles into that mix, right? I mean, come on.
There we go.
Like,
that's a wrap. So you got Geddy Lee on bass.
Yeah.
David Gilmour on guitar. Herbie or Chick on keys.
And
with
Miles on trumpet. I mean, come on.
There we go. Well,
and for some reason, I'm playing drums in that band.
You know, fantasy is a very special thing.
Yeah.
And that's the key word in this. But I just like to see where people's minds go with that.
Totally.
It's very, you know, people are unique in their taste in music. But
Absolutely.
Kito, thank you so much for taking the time to come sit down.
My man, it was a blast. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you to anybody that is listening to this. I really appreciate the messages and comments that I've been getting. And yeah, that is it. Shout out to Ben at the studio at Old Ridge. This is episode 10 of the Passion Collective podcast. I'm your host, Zach Frank. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.